Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you for putting me, or maybe giving me the honor of the last presentation on a 2.5-day conference. I think
strategy.
Yeah, right. So everybody stayed because they wanted to hear our, yeah, right, okay. But in all honesty, I do want to thank Steve because I am the last speaker. I think that we should give Steve and his group a round of applause. This has been excellent. This has really been a fantastic conference, and I think I've talked to many of you, and this is the first time, a conference focused on the work that we do all the time. I mean, we might go to a public health or a groundwater conference and they have a little bit about private wells, but this has been amazing, and so I'm trying to think all these things spinning through my head. And one of the things I've realized that some of the things I thought we might want to talk about or you might want to hear about a month ago may not be the things after 2.5 days. So I'm going to wing it a little bit, and I might talk a little bit less about some things and a little bit more that aren't on my slides. And I'm also I'm a hydrogeologist, and I've worked now for 6 years at the health department. I've really learned about public health and how important it is. And I, when I started, of course, my colleagues, the staff have been there 30 years. They all talk about how great our program is. Plus, we're very modest in Minnesota, so we don't talk about it too much. And so I'm kind of trying to balance, is this going to be interesting talk for everyone? But the fact that we can connect our work to protecting people's health is something that really makes our work meaningful. Because you can do environmental work, but that's not quite as universally received as it is when you do something to help people with their health. So a little bit of history. We're not nearly as old as the state of Massachusetts. Nothing is as old. I think in Minnesota, we didn't really have any European settlers until the 50s and 60s, 1850s and 60s, that is. But our Board of Health started in 1872, became the State Department of Health in 77. Here's the stuff that I decided may not be as interesting as I thought it was a month ago. But I will point out that in 72, that was the first program employee hired in Minnesota to work on private wells. 73, we licensed our first contractors, and our well code, which is really about the same. We've had some tweaks and changes, has been in place, though mostly the same since 1974. And our employee who started, I think, in 78 just retired, 39 and a half years. Ron Thompson was his name, and he knew everything, and so we're trying to pick up the pieces there. Again, I'm not going to go over all of this, but in '89, the Groundwater Protection Act really increased funding. We went from 6 employees to over 30. We have a budget of $3.4 million from fees. These are fees on license fees to drill a well, to seal a well. So now in 2017, we have 33 staff in 6 offices around the state. We delegate this authority to 9 counties, mainly counties, and we estimate about 98% of wells constructed are in compliance with the well code, our well code. And I also want to point out very quickly the 2008, the Clean Water Land and Legacy Amendment was passed in Minnesota. This is a constitutional amendment that raised sales tax 3/8%. And that money is dedicated to 4 different funds, one of them being clean water. And that's $100 million a year for clean water in Minnesota. A lot of that's for the TMDL programs, but some of it trickles down to us, and it's really been a game changer in Minnesota. We have this funding that's not our fee funding. It's funded our health educator, Frida, who you heard earlier today, or on Tuesday, and we're able to do this more education outreach. So the stuff I'm learning here is stuff we actually have some resources to implement, so it's very exciting. Again, public health is really the connection, our work, and again, I don't think I'm going to belabor this stuff, but our health department's mission is to protect, maintain, and improve the health of all Minnesotans. And one thing, I think I'll point that out in a minute. We, as a section, have decided to establish our own goals. We have these 33 people. We've been really focused for a long time on implementing the well code, on making sure that the contractors are doing the right thing in construction. That goes a long way to protecting public health. But what we haven't spent a lot of time on is proactive outreach and education. And this is where we're now just starting to expand. So we wanted our staff to kind of confirm or affirm that this is really what we want to do to really help protect public health and groundwater. In Minnesota, about 20% of the population gets its water from a private well. And like a few other states I heard earlier, Our surface water suppliers are our big cities: Minneapolis, St. Paul, St. Cloud, Duluth, and then they supply a few other cities surrounding them. But the majority of the community, the public water supplies, also get their water from groundwater. So we think our well code is not only protecting those who are drinking from the private well that's installed, but those who are in public water supplies and use groundwater. And one thing I want to point out, our commissioner at the health department is really focused on health equity. And this is something, and I've talked to a few of you about this, public water supplies, there's a lot of energy put in to meet the Safe Drinking Water Act. There's resources, there's a lot of monitoring. Even in Minnesota, with a well code, does a good job of protecting those new well owners. However, there's not, it's a disparity. There's not nearly the resources put to protecting private wells as there are, or private well owners as there are for public water supplies. So it's a little bit different twist on health equity. The demographics of private well owners are all over the board, but they, as a group, they certainly do not have equal protection as those on public water supplies. So what do we regulate? The majority of the wells constructed are domestic wells, the private wells like we're talking about, but we regulate most holes in the ground. Monitoring wells, irrigation wells, environmental boreholes are those for sampling or taking water levels that you don't take a water sample out of. It's kind of it's really a monitoring well in most cases, and we're working to change that. Geothermal heat exchangers, public, both community and non-community dewatering wells, elevator borings. We have mineral exploration right now up near the Boundary Waters. If some of you are familiar with that beautiful place, they're doing mineral exploration for copper and nickel. It's fueled by our cell phones and electronics, and that the cost is worth it. And so there's a lot of concern about that mining effort, and we have 4,000-foot borings that are really looking for those minerals up there, and there's concern about protecting the pristine boundary waters and the water resources up there, and also jobs. There's not a lot of, that was our iron range, and there was a lot of jobs in iron mining, and those have dwindled, and so it's kind of a tension in that area. We also, again, have, when I started at the health department, everybody told me, we lead the nation in sealing wells. And so I've used that for a while. We were over 280,000 since 1990 is really when we started really doing a good job of putting our information in the database. And then the blue line there is water wells, and the other 2,600 are other types of wells, monitoring wells, environmental boreholes. So the majority of wells sealed are domestic private wells. And you can see there was a drop in related to the housing market. Housing transfers fuel well sealing. And I have to admit, I finally decided, well, I don't really know if we're leading the nation, so I did some searching, and I found actually Michigan and Washington State may have sealed some more, so I don't say that with any confidence anymore, but we're certainly in the top, and that's where we like to be. We don't want to always be number 1. 2 or 3 is okay. So we actually got an award for it. So back then, maybe we were number 1 from the National Groundwater Association. And in sealing wells too, I'll just point out, if you have an unused, unsealed well, you're required to seal it in Minnesota. Of course, if nobody knows about it, we're not out there looking for them. We don't have time to go to everybody's house and see if you have a well. So there's usually, again, a property transfer. You have to disclose whether or not you have a well on your property when you transfer. But that's all you have to do. You don't have to sample. You have to disclose if it's in use or not. So if they're not in use, now we know. But we get so many that we can't follow up on all of them. But it does certainly fuel some sealing. And again, we've heard a variety of situations when it comes to licensing and regulations. We license all the contractors. So you can put a well in on your own property in Minnesota if you do it yourself. But otherwise, you have to hire a licensed contractor. So full contractors can do all the work. Specially licensed are things like pump installers or a monitoring well contractor. And they have to meet a continuing education requirement, and they have to actually have two contact hours with health department. And that puts a burden on our staff, but we do now video conferences. We used to travel around the state and do conferences, but we still go to some pump schools, some of the distributors and manufacturers. And our Water Well Association is a good partner, and Dave Heinrich, who was here, didn't want to stay to hear this, I guess, was one that really promotes education through the Water Well Association. About half of our staff, 15 or so, are inspectors, and they, like I said, they're distributed. We have district offices that have different services, visiting nurse and other things for the health department, but we have well inspectors, and they go out and we probably inspect about 25% of new wells and well ceilings. We basically want to make sure they're using the right materials. Those are on our well code. Are they using the right methods? Depending on the well type, they have to have at least 50 feet of grout or grout through a confining layer. A public water supply well has to be full-length grouted, and they can use, we don't allow chips, and so I'm thinking, I know Nebraska, and I actually sent an email to some of my staff saying that guy from Nebraska is really sure that the natural chips are the best, but I don't know. I think our staff are concerned more about bridging and not so much that the chips themselves, that they aren't really going to emplace them properly. So we'll discuss it. And setback requirements. We have lots of setback requirements, and one of my pet peeves is putting up a slide and saying, I know you can't read this, but you can, I just want to point out, 50 feet to a privy and a grave, animal storage, animal confined units, 0.1 to 1 is 20 feet, but if you have over 300, then it's 100 feet. Liquid manure storage, 300 feet. And, it's a challenge. Sometimes we have a lot of this, I think somebody mentioned the cabin mentality. And so, they have a lot and they have their septic tank and their neighbor has a septic tank and a well, and they all have to, find a place where it fits. They can get the rig in, and they don't want to put it at the, in the valley, in the ditch or something. So we do grant variances to these when necessary, and we rarely say you can't have a well, because it's, that's the right of the property owner to have that. One of the things that we have had in place again since 1975, every new well has to be tested for nitrate and bacteria. And that information is sent to us. And this is another point that I heard from all different presentations, is that if you drill a well in Minnesota, your licensed well contractor is required to take the sample, send us the results. They're required to send us the well log. There's no privacy, so you can go on our website and find everybody's well, who's in there. There's old wells and some that we've missed, but the vast majority of the well logs and the results from the nitrate and the arsenic are in there. We don't necessarily, sometimes we get the bacteria results, but the law requires that it just be negative, that there be no bacteria, and they put it in service. They don't even have to report that to us. So it's interesting that privacy is a concern, but we just have blown right past that. And if you want well logs, we have our Minnesota Well Index, and I didn't put it in here, but you could look it up. We have records. I think we're over 400,000 records of wells in the state, and we work with our Geological Survey, who does mapping county by county. And when they go into a county, they try to find more and more records, and they put those into. So we have a fantastic database of well information. And then in 2008, arsenic was added. And you can see less than 1% exceed nitrate of new wells, but we know, like a study done in the mid-90s where they just did random sampling of wells, it's more like 5%. And again, we attribute that to our well code. So, a lot of the setback and the depth and grouting requirements we know help protect from things from the land surface like nitrate. Arsenic, of course, is naturally occurring, and I have another slide or two of that. So here's nitrate in newly constructed wells. And I didn't put a slide in like Oklahoma there, but we have a lot of dots on the map. It's hard to see the state when you put all of the wells on there, because we have good information, for one thing. But we have nitrate, that red center of the state. We call that the Central Sands Plain. And I know Wisconsin also has a Central Sands Plain. I think we named ours first. I don't know. But we have a little healthy competition with our neighbors. But the red dots are over 10 parts per million. And interestingly, again, this is something that's occurred to me since I did this a month ago, that what I didn't include here is that our state agriculture department is doing an effort to sample private wells in townships that have sandy soils or vulnerable soils and a high percentage of row crop agriculture. And in Minnesota, that's corn and soybeans. We have potatoes too, and that as well loses nitrate. And they're finding some of those townships to have 30, 40, 50% of wells above the nitrate standard. So this is less than 1% statewide, but in some areas it's very high. And what another interesting point of that project or that effort is, they're doing it because they have what's known as the nitrate fertilizer management plan. And if your township has over, I don't remember the number, 20 or 30% of wells exceeding 10, then they can make the farmers implement best management practices. And that's what this is. They actually have some authority under the law. And this is new. I don't think they've actually used the authority yet. They're still doing the sampling. They'll start with voluntarily implementing BMPs, but if that doesn't work, they'll make farmers do things to reduce nitrate in the groundwater. And what they didn't think about when they started this program was education and outreach. They're taking the sample because they want the data. They send them a letter with the results, that's fine. But what about their neighbors who didn't sample? What about the townships adjacent that might hear about it? So finally they asked us, after we asked them to participate, hey, Health, can you do some more education and outreach surrounding this? So Frida and Kara are working on that right now with the Ag Department. This is interesting, and I don't have quite the answer. So I say less than 1%, but that's average over time, the last few years. And if you put 2016, I think we actually dropped down below 1% again of new wells. So this is new wells constructed to the code. And I'm not sure what the uptick is. These are not wells that are sampled the same well over time, which would show you a change over time. And so there could be that newer wells are going in, more wells are going in the sand plane, for instance. And I haven't done that analysis, and I think we should if we can try to explain it, but it's hard to ignore. There's an increase in new wells with nitrate above the standard. Arsenic is pretty steady. It's 10, 11% every year. And again, we don't expect that to change, as I mentioned earlier. Our arsenic study, actually I have a slide, so I can't say it right now. Here's arsenic in new wells, and again, not evenly distributed. And one thing I learned is that the colors are the same. Some of the speakers have said the green, and I'm like, there's no green on that slide. But the red dots are over 10 parts per billion arsenic. And if you take the orange off, you'd see that there is a correlation with that purple area, which is the Des Moines lobe till. It's a glacial deposit derived from the Rockies that has, it's a shale, relatively clay glacial deposit that is the source for most of the arsenic in the state. But we have the same problem. I talked to a few of you where two wells, half a mile apart, they look the same, they're in the same depth, wildly different arsenic concentrations. So part of the study, I know it's coming up very soon in my slides, is trying to tease that out because it's not very well predicted. If you're the Des Moines low till, you have a higher likelihood, but there's a lot of geochemistry and just hydrogeology that is so complex it's not simple to predict. Here it is, the arsenic study. So what we have done, as I mentioned a couple days ago in a question or comment, that there's a few purposes to this effort. We follow-up sampled from about 270 wells to determine if the sampling method or the timing affect the long-term concentration. And there is some variability, and I'm not going to share a lot with you because there's no clear pattern. Sometimes it goes down, sometimes it goes up. And we also collected field parameters. We've collected cations and anions. So we are going to do a little more robust analysis to see if we can tease out what governs the arsenic concentration in the initial sample, and then even long-term. Because right now, the drillers just have to take a sample. We don't say anything about how they have to give the homeowner the results before the wells put into use. But how they take the sample, there's really no requirement. And just as an aside, when there is any detection now, we've changed this. We send them a letter and a brochure saying, you have arsenic, and we'll refer to the MCL, but as I mentioned earlier, we will also say, even though it's below 10, if it is, you may want to take action to protect your health. And then the final thing, we're working closely with the United States Geological Survey, is can we better predict when we're going to find arsenic so that we can avoid it? Because boy, it would be better if they didn't have it in the well at all than to have it in there and then have to rely on them taking action, as you heard on Tuesday from Deanna and Frida. A third of them do nothing. And so we would prefer, but this is a tough nut to crack. The USGS is going to take us partway down the road with this. And it's going to be geochemistry and geology and I'm not sure what else. So we hope to someday have a map or maps that say, if you're drilling in this area, you might want to skip this layer and go to this layer. Or some areas maybe you're just going to have to plan for it. And it'll help the drillers, because I think one of the things drillers don't want to do is drill somebody a well and have arsenic in there above a standard. So they, sometimes they tend to minimize the problem. Oh, it'll go down, or it used to be 50. And, if we can back them up and say, in some areas there's not much you can do. You have a good chance to find arsenic. That will help everyone. So what can you do when you find it? We'll have to take that next step. So what are we doing now with our program? As I mentioned, the third bullet there, we're really trying to focus more on proactive education and outreach. And again, one of the things I heard when I started is, we get questions from all over the country because we have a good website and we have all this great information. Well, as a person with a short attention span, we have a lot of information in some of our brochures, and I think we can do a better job of just being a little more clear of what are the important points. And so we're not, we want to continue to provide that passive information, but we know we have to do more. And one of the things I heard here, the intensive outreach works, is with the Native American peoples and all of the other programs here. If you go in and the programs where you have private well owners come and listen and test, and that's great, but how do you sustain that? How do you bring that up to a broader population? Because none of us has the money, even with we'd need an army of people, and we just don't have that. It's because it's each well, not like a public water supply. And we have to do some improvement. Continuous improvement is a thing that we're embracing at the health department and in Minnesota, transitioning to more electronic submittal so that well drillers can submit their fees and their records online, and we still push a lot of paper. So we need to continue that at the health department. This is, thank you, Frida. One of the things that was mentioned on day one, I think, too, I have actually done some work with climate change in private wells. And one of our staff, Brenda Hoppy, did a study, she did a project where she looked at where our private wells in relation to floodplains, because we think in Minnesota that we're going to have more flashy, stronger storms and then drought, and so more floods. We have had floods since I've been there. We've had 2 or 3 or 4 maybe floods where private wells have been impacted. We actually then work with the counties and get water sampling bottles to them, primarily for bacteria, and provide information. But she did a study to really look at, she looked at floodplains and private wells, essentially. And that's a great start. We don't know what to do about it yet, but just bringing that into the conversation is something that we're happy to do. And, as Steve mentioned, it's clear in Minnesota. We had a very mild winter. We had an early spring, which, we're kind of okay with. And, but we don't, but we know we're going to get, we've had floods, a lot more 100 years floods, every few years. So we know this is going to be a problem. And also drought, too. How is that going to impact those with more vulnerable water supplies? So again, thank you, Steve, for putting this on. And I think we should try to do this sooner than later, again, because there's a lot of things that I'd like to make more connections and hear from others and share with our colleagues. And so again, thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions? Go ahead.
Amber Steele with the Missouri Geological Survey. I just had a question about transitioning to electronic submittal. We push a lot of paper also. There's not a good way to do that. Can you tell me more, like what you guys are?
Sure. We actually had some money from the Clean Water Land and Legacy Amendment a few years ago, and we've developed an online system, and we're just working out the bugs, which is a little frustrating. Our IT resources are mostly internal, but we have a system that's ready to go any day now that a well contractor can do a unique login. They will have then they'll be able to submit. We have a notification in Minnesota, so you don't have to get a permit. You just have to notify us and pay the fee, then you can drill. So they'll be able to submit their notification, pay their fee, then they'll go do their drilling. They'll be able to submit their record online. They'll be able to see what notifications they've submitted and haven't drilled, and well sealing records as well. They have to notify us for that too, and they'll be able to submit those online. So that'll be the majority of the paper we get. There's still a few things like we require a permit for monitoring wells for whatever reason, and so those we haven't included yet, but the majority of those wells will be taken over. So it's just a basic IT project, secure login and password, and they all have a license number so they can use that, and they are mostly excited. We also know that we still have plenty of mom and pop drillers out there that are, they may have internet, they may have dial-up, and they're still going to send us paper, so we're not requiring it. But we figure the bigger drilling companies will do it, so we'll get a majority of the records that way, even though we won't necessarily get a majority of the drillers.
Kathy Gardner from Michigan. With your well drillers collecting the bacteria samples, have you ever had a distrust with one, and did you have to do any enforcement?
Yep. We have.
Simple answer.
Yep. One time we ended up, we suspected the guy had a lot of clean samples. Turned out he also had chlorine and fluoride in some of his samples from the well, and there was no reason that should have been. And so we actually, I don't remember, this is before my time, we did enforcement against the well contractor who was filling it up in his kitchen, I suppose, with city water. So that was the problem. Like he didn't even think enough to find a clean well, and that's how I don't know. We don't really We've built a lot of relationships with our well contractors. We have an advisory council that we have David Heinrich sits on. And so we try to consider them partners, but there's always a few that are, I don't know, saving a buck, cutting corners. So yeah, and it's to their advantage. Of course, they want a clean sample because it's a good service. So those that are doing the right thing are very careful about how they collect it because they want it clean, but there's always a few.
Cindy Brooks from Ohio. More of a comment with some interest to follow. In my world is, as a watershed specialist also, your nitrate climb would be interesting to see while you're working with your Department of Ag, to see if they have soil test values for soil organic matter, to see with the soil health efforts in the ag world, if that's not leading to your nitrate issues. And if it is, I'd like to really hear about that later, because that would help us all, I think, in addressing those issues as we face them in other areas.
Yeah, that's interesting, because one of the things that we were talking about, because like I mentioned, a lot of that Clean Water Fund money goes to our TMDL work. And soil health, we know, is very important for, keeping nutrients out of our surface waters as well. So that there is a push for that. And another thing I'll mention is our USGS. We have a Water Resources Center in Minnesota, the United States Geological Survey. They have approached us about that very thing. They said, well, we should look at what's controlling nitrate, and they were talking about organic material, and I just didn't quite. We haven't bid on it yet, but I think that might be something we'll pursue in the future. But I think that's certainly over time, those farms that aren't managed well are losing soil, and what's left is not full of organic material anymore, and it's easier to leach. So,
I have a comment. Your arsenic work, where you see homes within, say, 100 yards of each other, can even have an order of magnitude different in arsenic. They're the same depth. They're in a glacial aquifer. We've had the same situation in Illinois, and we've actually done some work to look at that. And we found when there's still sulfate present, there's sulfate reducing bacteria present. The arsenic stays bound.
Yeah. And
as soon as the arsenic's gone, methanogenic bacteria take over. Or as soon as the sulfate's gone, And in those cases, that's when the arsenic's being released, so it's a reducing situation, and it can vary from well to well.
Yep.
And Tazewell County, Illinois, sampled about 500 wells back in the 80s for arsenic because somebody had a high result, and they were all sure it was because of the landfill that had been built, and not. And it turns out it's all naturally occurring, and so we have a ton of data from that location. There's been a couple papers published.
Yeah, great. And I think that's part of what the USGS is working on right now is with the chemistry data we've collected. It's just say what's the difference here and there, and a little bit of sulfur in the rock, can vary very much in a glacial material.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, one more question. Stay here.
Well, it's not questions, just to add to the arsenic discussion. They've done some research in Indiana, and there has been a correlation with high carbon soils at the surface and the arsenic below. So we're doing some geoprobing with the State Geological Survey to kind of get at that a little better. So
Yeah, I think that's exactly what the USGS was suggesting. So, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.